Hey everyone, it's the Patient Hodler coming at you with another quick crypto market update. And in this one, I want to address a little bit the FUD, the fear, the concerns around the Israel-Iran global situation and show you what really is important and that this is all noise and how resilient Bitcoin especially, but also the markets are against all of that. So if you enjoyed these quick updates, then make sure to drop a like here on this video. Let me know through the likes that you want more of these updates whenever significant things are happening. And let's jump right into the charts here. Let's check out what is going on. So we have, since a long time, we do have this range here. We have been ranging, we fell out of it, we came back into it, and now as the first time we find support on top of it, and we have been correcting as this situation unfolds a little bit. And some, let's say, fudders in the market are basically claiming on a daily chart a double top or lower highs or so. This could be an ABC correction. It doesn't really matter because what people are looking at is news, and basically news reporters standing in a war zone or wherever and rockets flying left and right, and they think it's the most significant thing in the world. And obviously, if your family is directly impacted or if you're living in these countries, then it does matter a lot, right? Then it affects you differently. But if you're living somewhere in Chile or in Europe or something, then the impact is for the investment and market more noise at the moment. Of course, if the two countries are starting to throw nukes at each other, we have a different situation here. But that's just not the case. If we are just looking at a global event that is shaking up the market, then we have a situation here that needs to be discussed and needs to be discussed against the common fear, right? And I would want to start this out with this here from BlackRock. And basically we see here S&P 500, gold and Bitcoin through major geopolitical events. And we see the development here for the 10-day return, so 10 days after global event started, and 60 days, so 2 months after a global event started, right? And let's maybe see here, we had another situation involving Iran in 2020, so that's 5 years ago, was US-Iran escalation. And the S&P 500 after 10 days was up 2%, gold was unchanged, and Bitcoin was up 12%. 60 days after, the S&P 500 was down 7%, gold was up 6%, and Bitcoin was up 20%. Or take the global pandemic, right? The sea crisis. Also, about 5 years ago, right? So we have the S&P 500 in the 10-day down 20%, gold down 9%, and Bitcoin took a hit 25%, right? But 60 days after that, S&P 500 already is up 2%, gold is up 3%, and Bitcoin is up 21%. So you really see here, Bitcoin is very resilient, and the short term is quickly forgotten, right? 2020 US election challenges, right? So what happened around that? S&P after 10 days already up 7%, then 12% after 2 months. Gold minus 1%, stays minus 1% unchanged, and Bitcoin is up 19% during that time and 131% after that. Obviously, we were in the bull market at that time. But take more. Russia, invasion of Ukraine, right? Probably the most comparable to a global situation unfolding between two countries that might go at war, and that this situation goes longer, right? So we see here the S&P 500 is 1% up, gold is up 2%, and Bitcoin is down 6%. After 2 months, the S&P 500 is up 3%, gold 9%, and Bitcoin 15% in the plus, right? So you can't see that anymore behind the camera, but it's 15%. Let me move that actually. So and then you can say, okay, there's a regional banking crisis and the carry trade problematic. Bottom line here is that basically there is a tendency for every global event to hit in the short term, more or less, right? I mean, Bitcoin also didn't take such a hit. And in the long run, it really doesn't matter anymore because there's just other factors at play. And the most important thing is that markets, once these situations unfold, they have uncertainty. So everything goes down, right? So at COVID outbreak, for example, you see all the markets are in the red. Bitcoin, gold, S&P 500, everything is in the red because no one knew, the market didn't know within 10 days what's actually going to happen. Is a world shutting down? Are millions going to die? What is happening? Or is this maybe over in 3 days? Or is it going to take multi-year? And so on. The market didn't know. And once the market doesn't know what's happening, then they are selling off or they are not buying anymore or whatever, right? But then after a while, even though the pandemic is in full mode, everything's going up again, right? So the market doesn't care. Then they have certainty more or less in which direction this is going, and basically they are they are already back to normal, investing as never before, right? And I think this time is no different to this, because if you see all these events, they were basically propagated as the end of the world, but they were not. And the only thing, as I said many, many times on this channel, here the famous chart, the famous pink chart of Roel and Julian Bittel with a global M2 12-week lead, which is 3 months lead, for example, is just predicting with a very high 89% correlation where basically Bitcoin could be going in the next 3 months. We still are at all-time highs for Bitcoin there. So even if we get a dip, you see that these dips usually don't take much longer than 10 days. We are in a dip already. Is this dip over? It depends, because if you look at this chart, this is a 3 months lead. If you look at other charts, you have 68 days lead or 76 days lead, whatever people like to align this to see the highest correlation, right? Also here we see 30-day is not that much because there are dips in it that are just not reflected directly or not in this way by M2. But 60, 90, and 180 days to a year, the correlation is 80 to 90%. And that says, okay, maybe you dip a little bit more here in this dip, right? It's very accurate, but it's not exactly on the line. Maybe it takes 1 or 2 weeks to come out of the slump and pump again, right? But the direction here for global M2 is clear, and it doesn't matter if there are hypersonic missiles being shot from one country to another. That doesn't matter after 10 days or so, up to a couple of weeks in such a conflict, unless the conflict reaches a new stage where uncertainty is created again, right? A new level of uncertainty. For example, if they would pull out the nukes, then you will have uncertainty how this affects global development, or if the US gets in the mix. So let's say there is something happening on US soil that the US takes as a reason to enter the war, right? For example, that would create new uncertainty. Very likely, or it's expected that markets crash, right? But we see now, okay, this conflict happened, oil is being affected, we see the oil price going up. A couple of days in, we see, okay, this is how both sides behave. The market is gaining certainty. We will see how the market in general and oil also are going to open on Monday, because the stock market is closed. The weekend also had action which is not reflected in the stock market. But overall, I think for Bitcoin, it's just going to follow this trajectory. And that means we should be in 3 months from now at multiple new all-time highs compared to where we are right now. Okay, so if anything, that might be a buying opportunity if we believe that this is going to continue for the rest of the year, right? So that's your choice, not mine. I'm personally holding at the moment, but we will see. All in all, if we're looking at statistics also, the long-term holders are basically piling on Bitcoin. We see it here in the green chart as never before. Long-term Bitcoin holders are aggressively accumulating no matter what, right? So very likely that they are knowing what's going on. And this is not like multiple cycle reflection. This is just this cycle. And we have long-term holders accumulating and selling off and accumulating again, right? So basically long-term holders are piling on in these dip sideways scenarios, right? We also had that here, right? Long dip, and then suddenly the long-term holders came back in, indicating that we might be in for a push very, very soon. But with that said, I do think that these crises don't really matter for us as investors in Bitcoin. Even for stocks, it doesn't really matter. It only matters in the short term. Maybe opens up buying opportunity. But don't let yourself get flooded out from doomsday sayers that are on the news and everywhere else. If anything, we can even turn off the news, not look at it anymore, or only like not looking at it is very hard. But let's say not watch the entire day news, because it shifts the perspective to noise, whereas we could be focusing on what the underlying factors are. So if you enjoy this stuff, then smash up the like button here, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, and wherever you are on the world, have a great morning, evening, day, night, or afternoon. I catch you in the next video or live stream. Bye.